Welcome to the session on identifying and learning from competition. This is prepared for the Startup Summit hosted by the International Trade Council. And I'm Jason Kraus. I'm a partner at EQX Fund and the founder and CEO of Prepare for VC, where we help startups scale their startup stories and investors. So this is a presentation we actually developed for one of our accelerator programs and excited to share with all of you today. So what we're going to dive into today is how you can identify different categories in which your product or service competes, what it takes to research the top competitors and how you go about finding who they are and what you can learn from them, how you can find underserved customers or areas in your market, what it takes to examine different business models and pricing strategies, and how you can highlight features and customer needs that set your business apart from everybody else in the space. So when I had started Prepare for VC about 5 years ago, I went around and asked different investors what their biggest pet peeves were. Everything from some angel groups, individual investors, venture capital funds. And a theme that kept popping up is that a lot of startups go out and say they have no competition. And in reality, every business, big or small, has something they're competing with, whether it's, a big company and corporation, or even just competing against sending text messages, calling people on the phone. There's something you're replacing in the way that exists right now that people have to switch over to use your product. So investors look at it as if you say you have no competition, you either haven't done your market research or there's a reason nobody else wants to be in the business, and there's that's not worth competing for. So in this section here, we're going to focus on how you can actually figure out who that competition is and use it to your advantage, whether you're in a startup pitch to investors or just using this for your own internal research and discussions to grow and scale your business. So the first step is really looking at the categories of competition, and you could fit your business into multiple segments and targets as well. So it can be everything from you're a technology company, real estate, finance company, you're in the professional services space. You can also dig into more specifics like within the tech space, there's robotics, there's social networks, advertising, even business models, there's marketplace systems versus enterprise software, and there's advertising based business models versus just versus other types of models here as well. And when you take all of these and basically figure out, the first step is figuring out as many of these categories that you fit into as possible, seeing which ones overlap and where you can really where you should dive into competition. So some areas this helps, like at the very basic level, it helps in terms of figuring out your SEO and marketing strategies. It also helps in terms of figuring out your pricing strategy of like, what do people, what space should you consider yourself, and how are customers used to paying for products or interacting with businesses in your particular segment. And then it also helps in terms of really when we go to the next step and identifying the competition, being able to effectively talk about these companies and showcasing why there's room for you to succeed in this marketplace and why this can be a really successful business post funding or post anything else you're pitching to and looking for when you're presenting this. So wanted to go over one example here of pretty well-known company, especially in the startup space. Slack, it's used by a lot of businesses for internal discussions and chat. Basically, you can have different channels for projects or for internal tasks and categories, and it combines several different segments into that. So there's business communication chat, there's real-time collaboration, open filing, unified communications, and task management. And so this is through this exercise and did a category analysis of each of these areas that they fit in within the technology and communication space. So they really took out and built out these, and then they figured out, do any of them compete in multiple segments, or are they only specifically for basically, if you look at business communication and chat, people can use WhatsApp or HipChat, any of these others. Then there's Hangouts, which is also moving into or also overlaps with the real-time collaboration, like GoToMeeting or now Zoom and Skype and JoinMe. So some of these will hit multiple features that Slack has, but in their analysis, one of the main differentiators that they want to showcase to investors or to other partners is the fact that you can do everything in one space. So when they organize the competition, their advantage is maybe you can manage and organize your tasks in Trello. You can do the communication and chat in WhatsApp, and you can file share with Dropbox. But Slack allows you to do everything in one place, and organizing it this way allows you to present that as an advantage rather than a disadvantage of having all these competing categories. And so they categorized and then did a function analysis of what do each of these businesses offer, and the overlapping circle in the middle is Slack, that does everything in one place. And then if they dug deeper, they could take a few of these competitors and figure out where their functions, what functions Slack has that some of these may have, but none of these other competitors have all of them the same way Slack does. So group messaging, direct messaging, task management, and integration are all a main focus of this, whereas each of the other competitors only have particular check marks that they cross off. And there's other categories you could throw in here around, depending on what you want to showcase, around pricing, around business model, around who the target customer is, whether it's purely business users or more of a broader user base, and depending on which of these companies you were, like Trello would have a different group of categories they want to showcase to everybody else they're presenting, and would organize it a little bit differently. But the things you feature are going to be the ones that whoever your ideal persona is going to care about, and is going to be the reason that somebody chooses Slack versus WhatsApp or Asana or Trello. And you guys can all do the same thing in your own business and figure out, really, go back to the level here of like, what categories do I compete in? Who are the other players in this space? And what functions will make people choose my product over everything else out there? How can we highlight that to show where we're better? Some competition here. And as you're watching this here, just take some time to categories you're currently competing, who the top players are. No company has zero competition. So if we went back to that chart, Slack would also be competing with phone calls, they'd be competing with emails, and they'd be competing with face-to-face meetings and interactions. And so again, this is really about competition as what do people have to replace in their current way of doing to focus on to be able to use your product instead. And research tools we'd recommend, you know, at the very least, start out with the Google search. You can see who the top companies are in your that come up with, you know, you've done your category analysis and you figured out you're a commercial real estate technology company. That's also in the AI space. So, you know, put some of the keywords in and see who comes up top of the list and dig into some of those companies of how they're promoting their business, if they're actually true competition or if there's other categories you should be focusing on, and look at some of their messaging. How do they drive people to the page? Where do they send people once they're on their website? As well as, you know, how do they showcase their pricing? If they showcase it, what's the overall business model? And what do people tend to think about the product? The next tool to highlight on the competitive analysis is Crunchbase. So it's a similar platform. There's other tools like PitchBook as well. I like to showcase Crunchbase because there's a little bit more of the free tools here before you get into the premium versions. And basically, it allows you to dig into either by sector or other categories that they build out, who falls in, like what startup companies as well as public companies fall into your sector. And on each of the pages, you can also see, you know, it's really good for the private market and startup space as well, in terms of seeing how much funding companies have raised, who some of their investors are, and other information. Some of the pages will even have web traffic and other information that tell you more in depth about the business as well. Howler is another site that goes more into more user generated content and reviews on, it could be, you know, everything from employee reviews of the leadership teams within your competitors to, you know, categorizing like who the top leaders in a particular segment are. That people don't like about a competing product or service that maybe you can fill in and be a leader in that particular segment, or even within a smaller niche in your industry that seems to be forgotten and has customers that are overlooked. And then there's companies like SEMrush, which give you more SEO data and information on, you know, who's ranking top within the keywords and what's really trending within your product and industry. And you know, Google also has some free tools and resources there as well. And yeah, I think the SEO part is important to look at because, like, especially now, you know, online is gonna be the first place people look for. They're going to be looking at your website and other information to figure out whether or not they want to buy your product and service. And if you can get, you know, higher up to the top of the list there, it's going to drive, you know, drive more users, customers, consumers, whatever you're looking for in your business. And there's certain techniques you can enable by looking at really diving into this research that'll let you stand out and be ahead of the competition there. AngelList is it started as a connection platform to angel investors. They also have a really big job component that lets people post jobs with both equity as well as salary positions. So a lot of startups are using that job portal as well. And there's a really good database of both startups, investors, and just people on the platform that are in the startup space. And you can see who other companies have as investors, as advisors, and what jobs they're posting, and how they offer those positions, and use that to inform the decisions you make about your business. And then Trust Radius, it's the last platform I wanted to highlight here, and that's really a tool, especially for companies that are already big businesses that you're going to be competing against. It's a great review site where you can look at what people have said about that product or service, what they figured out other companies in this space are looking for. And, the real goal of reading these reviews is seeing, is this an area, like for every feature you're building out, is this an area that's worth competing against? And is there a particular segment that people don't like, or a particular thing that is a low-hanging fruit that if you figure out, people would jump from the other competitors and use your product or service instead? So these are just some of the tools you can use, and there's a variety of other resources out there, but yeah, again, the main thing is really figure out what you want to focus and learn from the competition, and then use that to both enable your internal decisions as well as be able to showcase and talk about the next part, or I guess the last part is going to be your value proposition that makes you stand out from the competitors and brings people into your business. And so these are some questions to dig into while you're going through this process of competitive analysis. You want to figure out what pricing models are being used in the market. And the reason for this is that sometimes, or it's easiest to get consumers on board to pricing models they're comfortable with and they're used to. And looking at the competition can help figure out, what's in your particular industry. The other side of that is sometimes might be a pricing model necessarily isn't really nice or up to date with what consumers are looking for, and maybe with a new model that attracts people into your business instead of other competitors. Which customers are underserved? So maybe when you were looking at the companies that come up, everybody was marketing to every space was marketing to business owners. You're in the consumer market, or maybe everybody was marketing to like tech companies, and you serve mom and pop users, and really figuring out what customers aren't being marketed to, aren't being addressed in the other products. And if you have a particular, especially if you have a really wide network in another space that nobody else is addressing, it leaves a gap for your company to move in first and then establish that beachhead before you grow and expand into other categories. You're also looking at what the biggest weaknesses of the competitors are, and that's everything from the reviews to other information you find online. And again, you want to figure out if there's areas that people don't like about another product that your company can solve. The flip side of that is you want to figure out what areas are already dominated in the market, and there might be some things it doesn't make sense to compete again. against. So, maybe you don't want to compete against, like, depending on what the goal of your company is, maybe you don't want to build a broad social media platform that competes against Facebook, but you found there's an underserved customer segment from startup entrepreneurs, and you want to build a social network purely for that segment. So this is all that research you gather to figure out who you focus on, how you differentiate from the competitors, and what areas to avoid in terms of building out and marketing product. And then you're also looking at understanding the market in terms of if there's several major leaders or many small players, and what the best way to build, scale, and differentiate yourself is within that market. And then the last piece we want to focus on here is really figuring out what your value proposition is. So why do people choose you? Why do they switch to your company? And why do they switch now? And building this out, again, it comes from all of that market research you've done, looking at the competitors, looking at your industry, and seeing how you can differentiate yourself. And then this is really valuable when you're presenting, really presenting to anyone and telling your story. So it's valuable when you're presenting to investors. It's valuable when you're creating your market materials, and even doing whether it's a startup demo day pitch or just a quick video you're putting on YouTube or Instagram and sending to all of your followers. You have to have something that you've built out that says, people should choose us because we do this. You should switch today, and we're going to solve these major problems for all of our customers. And this is a culmination of all that research you've done, that gets people on board and excited about everything you're building. And yeah, I'd like to open it up for any questions.